What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
Today's guest is Andrew Oxley, who's like myself is an executive coach. He's a speaker, but he's the founder of a company called the Oxley Group. And Andrew is passionate, and I like this word passionate, is passionate about helping leaders build healthier cultures.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the hook that got me when I found out about his bio and his track record. Because of discussions we've had with us on the subject of culture is in today's time, I don't think there's been ever a more important time for us to be able to impact and manage the culture within our organizations. And because of this, he had a book that I'm going to ask him to talk about a little bit because of this thing we're talking about just in our pregame warm-up. The subject frustration is one of my favorite words right now.
Yeah.
And of course, it's been there throughout my entire career, Andrew. But welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here, Mike. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So tell us about the premise and what inspired you to write your book on frustration.
Well, so I've been doing this for about 30 years now, and I don't come from a training and development background, executive coaching background. I actually come from background in engineering. And I always tell you that uniquely qualifies me for what I do today, which is a nice way of saying it's really no qualification whatsoever. But what it does do is I'm always looking for systems. I'm looking for ways to explain things, quite often very complex things in simple ways. And so when I was trying to coach executives and leaders about how to interact with people differently, they kept coming up with this word that they were so frustrated. They were so frustrated with their team, and why don't they get it? And of course, I'm sure your audience understands that the problem with pointing a finger at someone else, thinking they're the source of your frustration, is that four fingers are pointing at you. Or Dr. Wayne Dwyer said it the best. He said, if you think the rest of the world is the source of your frustration, then you're going to have to send the rest of the world to the psychiatrist for you to get better. So I've got to work on me. And so, but the problem when you're with coaching leaders, of course, is that sometimes they're self-aware and sometimes they're not as self-aware as they could be. And I think that's true of most of us, right? There's things we're self-aware about, and there's things that we're not quite as aware as we could be. And so you have to have a model to help people understand how people are different. And in that difference, in that diversity, there's actually strength, but it doesn't feel like strength when you're trying to manage people who are radically different than you and don't respond to things the way you do. And so, they're frustrated. And so, one of my first mentors asked me this question, and I started asking leaders this question. I said, what's it like to be on the other side of you? And I want you to just get your audience to think about that for a minute. What's it like to be on the other side of you? And when I was asked that question, I said, well, it's wonderful. And he looked at me and he said, I know you think it is, but I'm telling you, it's not. I think we always know our intentions, and we want to be judged by our intentions, but we judge others by what we think their intentions are, and we frustrate people. That's what it's like to be on the other side of us. Sometimes we're frustrating our direct reports, our friends, our peers, our boss sometimes. We don't even know we are, because they don't respond the way we would respond when we're frustrated. So we make assumptions about what's happening. And so the book was a way to explain a complex problem in a very simple model so that people can read it and go, oh my gosh, that's me right there. That's what I do. And those people that piss me off to no end, that's them over there. And they're not doing it on purpose. It's just their natural response to stress and frustration.
Yeah, it's kind of what way we're wired, and our behavioral, I don't use the word personality, our behavioral tendencies. How we've, kind of naturally wired, and then also how we have developed, been impacted, chiseled by life to learn how to be able to protect ourselves as we interact with others. And this word frustration is sort of manifests itself from that. I'm kind of curious about this. Your book title is called The Four Faces four faces of frustration. My question is, can you real quickly tell us about the four faces?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are four, and now, like you said, this is a behavioral model. It doesn't explain everything by any stretch of the imagination. Where that'd be wonderful if it did. It doesn't, but it's a good hook to hang conversations off of with people, right? And so the four faces basically are based off the DISC model. If you're familiar with dominance,
Sure.
steadiness,
Yep.
and conscientiousness. But what I found with DISC was people were just using it as a little nice team building thing. Oh, I'm a red, I'm a yellow, I'm a green, or I'm blue. But they didn't really ever know what to do with the information, and they didn't really know how to recognize what other people were. And so I was like, well, when is the time when it's most obvious what somebody's behavioral style is? And it's when they're frustrated. That's when you recognize their communication style. And I'll go you through the four faces. The first one is the red, the angry face. And now, in the defense of a red or a high D dominant style, they're not actually angry all the time. Well, sometimes they are, but not all the time. They're just frustrated. Things are not moving fast enough. People aren't getting it fast enough. Why do we have to go so slow? Let's just move. Let's go. And so that shows up, though, to their peers and their team as anger. And people sometimes, if anyone's ever said to you, like, why are you so angry? Like, they've said it to me once or twice. And I'm like, I'm not angry. And then I'm angry that they thought I was angry, and which really proves their point, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the angry face. Now, everybody starts out angry from time to time. I don't know about you, Mike, but sometimes we get angry.
That's
but
right.
3 of the 4 behavioral styles, the other 3 faces transition through anger into what we call frustration. Now, the frustrated face for the red is the angry face.
Mm-hmm.
But for the other 3, they transition. So for a yellow, which is a fast-moving people person, an influencer, when they're frustrated, they got angry, but then they start feeling guilty that they got mad. And so they start telling you everything's going to be okay and it's going to be good. And they're the eternal optimists. So they got the big smile on their face and they're like, it's going to be fine, Mike. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be good. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they move into this frustration. The way you know they're frustrated is that they're overemphasizing the positive about everything that's actually happening.
Yeah, you know what you're talking. I mean, it's to add a little bit of context of what you're speaking about is that whenever there's pressure that comes against the natural behavioral style, in other words, the I style, the influencer style, is very expressive style, and if something is impeding that expressiveness, that's going to bubble up and it's going to come out, and maybe not in anger, but they get frustrated because they want to lean into it.
Yes.
You'll get to this in a minute, but the S style, the steadiness style, is let's hold hands, sing kumbaya, everybody come together. So if I have to go in isolation, or if I think I'm doing something that's letting the team down, that's pressure that's coming against my style, that's causing me to get frustrated. And so I really like, because I'm also certified in everything DISC model. So when you frame this, I'm going, that I've got his kindred spirit I'm talking to here.
Yeah, it's a very common model, right? So the frustration face for the red is the angry face, right?
Mm-hmm.
The frustrated face for the yellow is the happy face, which is like that's okay. Now the green, you just mentioned, the steadies, which are the slower people moving individuals, right? Theirs is no emotion. Like when they're frustrated, they just stop talking. They try to talk, but people aren't listening, so they just stop talking. And here's how you'll know you were dealing with somebody who was a green is when something doesn't work, they'll say to you, "Well, I knew it wasn't going to work." And they're like, "Why didn't you say something?" "Well, I tried." But you wouldn't.
Right. Yeah, they go to a place of withdrawal, because
Correct.
withdrawal creates, I call it false harmony. They try to go to harmony, but it's not harmony; it's false harmony, because they're not sharing, they're not being open with that, and so it shows up with that. Then, and so, tell us about the conscientious phase.
Well, they just start asking questions, so they look worried. That's the face of worry. Like what about this? What about this? What about this? Because nobody else is paying attention to the details, so I've got to pay attention to the details. Now they just come across as a pessimist, though, and and in fairness to them, they're not a pessimist. Just like the red isn't always angry, but that's the way it appears to other people. So the 4 faces are the angry face, the happy-go-lucky face, the no emotion face, and the worried face. And so what I would challenge your audience to think of, which one am I? When I'm frustrated, not when I like something flies all over me in the moment, but when I'm frustrated, when anger is when anger festers for a little while, it turns into frustration because I don't know what to do about this thing that's bothering me. And if you don't know, go home and ask someone who knows you well, and they will tell you. And you may not like the answer, but we all know, and we probably know the people we love the most in our lives. So like when they're frustrated, what happens? And a lot of times, if you think about the closest relationships in your life, like your significant other or your spouse, a lot of our arguments with people stem from the fact that their reaction to a frustrating, stressful situation is the opposite of what we would do. Like, I want to talk about stuff when I'm frustrated. My wife wants to get quiet and think about it, right? And then when she wants to talk about it, she really wants me to listen, which if you're a guy is not easy.
No.
Right. No guy goes up to one of his friends and says, I got this problem. Can you just talk to me about it? No, we only go talk to friends about our problems when we want someone to tell us what to do or give us some advice or something like that. Right. That's one of the basic differences between men and women, of course. And so, a lot of times this happens at work too, right? We're managing people and they don't look motivated and they don't look engaged. And what I challenge leaders to really think about is that them or is that a reflection of you in them? In other words, is it what you're doing with them from a management and leadership context that's causing them to respond in a way that looks to you like they're not engaged? So once again, we're turning the mirror back to the leader.
It's that self-awareness factor that's actually the hardest place for us to get to, but it's the most important aspect of it.
Yes.
As far as as far as dealing with people, then it's one of the things that I spend a lot of time talking about is emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And so share with me your perspective on this. What you're describing really is an EQ model, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's touches on all of them, right? So first of all, self-awareness is, I've had some brilliant mentors in my time. They were not the kind or gentler mentors. And one of my first mentors said to me, he said, "What do you know about yourself, Oxley?" I thought it was a silly question. I was like, well, I think I know myself pretty well. And he said, "I don't think you do. I don't think you know why you do the things you do and why you don't do the things you know you should." And you know what? He was right. I didn't understand me. I wasn't self-aware. I was just blissfully going through life thinking that I was just normal, right? And we all think we're normal, right? Which means everybody not like us is by definition then abnormal, right? Something wrong with them. They're not like me. So they got to be self-aware. This is a model that helps you be more self-aware because it helps you understand how you are perceived by other people. By the way, it doesn't mean it's wrong and there's no better style than others, but how am I perceived? And then the other thing is, can I manage that? Like you probably know people, and I do too, that, well, I just have a bad temper. Well, okay, so they have no ability to manage. They, a red, for example, they're pretty combustible. Are they aware of that? Are they aware of the triggers, the things that push them over the edge? And are they well able to manage that? So being aware of something and being able to manage it are two very different things.
Totally different. It starts with because you can't manage it until you become aware of it. Second thing you hit on is really important is that maybe it's just one of my triggers. I'm not sure. But it has to do with we can't hide behind kind of whatever label we might put on ourselves. We're talking about, in this particular case, the four faces. I can't hide. Well, that's just the way I am. Because because you said something, you said, but the word perception. I love the phrase somebody told me one time, perception is reality. And the more that we can embrace that I'm responsible for how I am perceived.
Yes.
In other words, I want you to see me a certain way, but if you see me in a different way, that's not your fault. It's my responsibility. I'm not associating blame with it. But it sounds like you're challenging leaders to really take a hard look at what's taking place in my interaction with other people and make some determination on how to become more effective at it without asking them to change, forcing me to adapt.
Yeah, I had a leader years ago. She ran a really big state-level organization for an insurance company. And this would have been probably 15 to 20 years ago, Mike. And so a long time. Right. And the leadership landscape's changed a lot in that 15 to 20 years. But her point to me was, why do I have to change? I mean, nobody cuddled me on the way up. Nobody made any allowances for me. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you wish they had? Do you wish people had maybe tried to be a better leader for you? And she said, yeah. I said, so did you answer your question? And she's like, yeah, I did. See, I think sometimes we go, well, no one did it for me. Why do I have to do it for someone else? It's like, well, do you wish someone had? Like, do you wish someone had treated you with respect? Do you wish someone had tried to communicate more effectively with you? Do you wish somebody had believed in you more? Do you wish someone had supported you? Do you wish someone had challenged you and not given up on you? If the answer to those questions are yes, but I shouldn't have to because no one did it for me, then that's just not a very mature leadership stance, right? It's now I use the word coddle because I think sometimes people equate supportive leadership behavior with coddling people, and I would say coddling people is not leadership. Like the best leader that I've interviewed leaders for years now. I would say the best leader you ever had described them, and they always describe the same person. They were tough, they were hard, but they believed in them. They supported them. They trained them. They poured into them, but they were hard. They didn't accept crap. That's what we want. That's the leader we want to work for. Now, it might be comfortable to work for someone who's just supportive but doesn't challenge me, but that's not a leader. That's just somebody who's just taking up space. They're not going to bring out the best in me. They're not going to challenge me. They're just going to manage me.
Yeah, especially what you're talking about. And it's ironic because I wrote the word here, coddle, because it's in some of the consulting projects I've taken on people. You think of that, you're telling me to be soft with my people and not push my people and just make them feel good. And that's not what you and I are talking about here.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of going and making somebody feel good. It's being able to deliver the difficult message. It's setting high expectations, but equaling that with sending a message that you're lifting that individual up as far as your belief in them, showing them a pathway on what they can do to become different and better and stretch into who they really intended to be and grow into that space,
Right.
which isn't coddling.
Yeah. No, it's not. When two people meet, right? You meet one of your people, you meet anyone. When you leave, they're either better or worse for the interaction, right? Nothing stays the same. It's just a chance. No, they're either better or they're worse. My goal, and the reason I do the work I do, is I want everyone I meet to be better at the end of it. Like they're more positive, they're more engaged, they're more excited, they're more passionate about the future. They see more possibility. That's what I want. And if you're a leader and you're just supporting people, you're not making them better. You're actually, I would argue, they're a little bit worse because. When you don't expect very much from people, what you're saying is, I don't think you're very capable. We set our expectations of what our belief about people. So if I don't expect much from you, it's like, yeah, you're not that good. I'm not going to expect too much. That's the subtext of the message. Now, I can't I may believe someone's capable of great things, but maybe not today. I gotta move them in that direction. I can't just hold them accountable to some unreasonable expectation in the short term. I can tell them what I think I'm capable of, and then hold them accountable to a reasonable expectation in the short term.
Yeah, I love this thing about moving somebody in the direction to become as capable as they're able to. And the reason why it responds with me is the book that I'm working on right now, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have this visit with you, because this is my research laboratory. But it's called Move the Ball.
Sure.
And that the whole concept has to do with my playing basketball in high school, had to do with as long as the ball is in motion, you have a chance of scoring. As soon as you freeze it and stop it, limits the chance of anybody scoring a basket. And so I started thinking about it from a leadership role. Our job literally is every day, every project, every situation. My job as a leader is one thing: move the ball. What am I doing to move the ball? But as a leader, you're not the one who's got the ball in your hand. You're creating the environment for the play to actually take place. And so how do you coach your leaders to make sure that they're doing what it takes to helping their team move the ball?
Yeah, well, the problem a lot of times is that they really want to take the ball. And, they don't, when we progress through leadership, I mean, the first stage of leadership turn you go through is where you become a manager, and now you're not responsible for moving the ball yourself. You're responsible for getting other people to move the ball, right? And that's a hard behavior shift, skill shift, and value shift for leaders, and getting them to recognize the shift that's required. In fact, our core leadership development program is called Leader Shift. It's because it's a shift of the mind, and it's a shift of the skill, and it's a shift of the behaviors that you're engaging in. And I'm no longer, if I value what I achieve, I'm never going to be a great leader, because I have to value what my people can achieve, and thereby what I'm able to achieve. So there's a shift. Now, when you take the next turn and you go to a manager of managers, now you're further away from the action. And now you got to figure out, how do I get the people that are managing the people who actually do the work to do what they need to do? So it's just a logic thing. So what we're teaching people to focus on is, what would you be doing in this particular situation? Okay, that's great. That's not your job anymore. Your job is to get them to do some variation on that, because it may not be exactly the same. What's the outcome you're seeking to achieve? And then what is the level of engagement, motivation, and skill from the person you're coaching, so you can use an appropriate skill process to move them into action?
Yeah, especially because I love this thing where you're managing. But I wrote down, as you do this, managing is you have to let go in order to lead.
Yes.
Because if you don't let go, you're not leading, you're driving. And that's the difference between the two.
Yes, without question.
And you can't scale. I mean, is there a situation that you've seen in the past where somebody really struggled with being able to let go, but man, when they finally did, things kind of exploded for the team and things kind of took off?
Yeah. I actually have a funny story about this. It's interesting because very successful entrepreneurs struggle with letting go. And when I say very successful, I mean, they've got large teams around them, but they do struggle with letting go of especially functions that they came out of. That's the hardest function for them to let go of. And so I had a guy who ran a pretty large organization, and he said to me, I just can't do this coaching crap. And that's what he called it. He said, this coaching crap, I can't do it. And I said, okay. And he said, well, you do it for me. I said, I don't need to do it for you. I need to teach you how to do it. And he's like, but I don't want to do it. And I said, but I need to teach you how to do it. So this conversation went on for about 3 or 4 months, and we were doing a lot of work with their firm. And finally I looked at him, I said, do you just want me to do this for you? And he said, I've been asking you to for 4 months. And I said, so I actually started coaching his team for him. Now, the interesting thing is that was about 8 years ago, and he is an exceptional coach now.
So what was the shift for him?
I think he had to start understanding people more effectively. Like in his own words, he thought he was a really good communicator. And I think we all do, right? We all think we're really great communicators, because I have yet to say something and not known exactly what I was trying to say. I mean, I'm sure the same is true, right? I always know what I mean when I talk.
That's it.
But that's not communicating. That's just talking. I know what I meant, but did you know what I meant? So he had to start looking at the impact of his words to see if he had actually communicated effectively. Well, that's a much higher standard.
Yes.
And he started to study, and he started to listen to podcasts and read books. And man, the guy consumes leadership material now. And he's an amazing leader.
Yeah.
What happens when you become more effective in leadership, though? John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, that you are the lid on the development of your organization. So if you don't develop as a leader, you just hold people down, and either they stall in their own development or they go somewhere else. And so when he started to develop, his people started to develop, and the organization it's increased 8 times in size over that 8-year period. Now, so he is not running the same company he was running.
No,
back
not at all.
then. It's a much more complex organization.
Yeah. I'm going to say this out loud so that we capture this in the show notes, but it has to do with the question that I hear you asking us from a self-awareness standpoint. Am I the lid? Am I the lid? If things aren't moving on, what am I doing to be the lid of what's taking place? And I have to address that first if I want to try to create scale. The second piece, as you were talking about this thing, Andrew, that hit me was it sounds like you didn't use these words, but it sounds like the client you were working with, as he became a coach, there's a good chance that he moved from being somebody who would tell people what to do, okay, which is what I call train. I'm training you to do this. And then you shift in a place where I learned as a coach, you learn how to teach people to think, which is a totally different mindset. And when you're getting people to think, now what happens, you're getting more engagement. What happens is that you get a lot more buy-in from the people because it's their thoughts as opposed to them just doing what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that space, it sounds like where he learned to excel.
Yeah. And the great thing about coaching leaders that are growing is their challenges are never the same. They're always got something new they're having to learn. In fact, one of my favorite questions to ask leaders is, what's the question you don't currently have the answer to? See, the questions we know the answers to, we love those questions because those, I know what to do. But the question we don't have the answer to, that's the sticky one. And that's the one that will trip us up. And that's the one we want to ignore and go back to all the stuff we do know. So now the interesting thing about being a leader is that your business results will shine a light on the thing that you need to learn. So, for example, turnover's too high in my organization, or our customer service scores aren't where they need to be. Our response rates aren't where they need to be. Well, let's just unpack that and figure out where the leadership breakdown is. Because everything points back to leadership, right? When I had a CEO call me one time and he said, I want to use we have our own proprietary 360 platform. He said, I want to use your 360 platform to do end of year reviews on my people. And I'm like, I don't know, that's a great use for that. He said, well, it'd just be so much more efficient. And then I wouldn't have to have all those conversations. And I'm like, I was like, yeah, see, that's not what our tool is used for. And he said, well, you don't understand. I got some real problem people. And I said, well, maybe they're not the problem. And needless to say, we didn't get that engagement.
Yeah, maybe not.
But because I could see where the problem was. He was treating people as things, and one of my favorite expressions is be efficient with things and be effective with people. And he was trying to be efficient with his people, right? He was trying to be efficient, use this 360 platform. And it would have been a big project for us. I mean, it would have been, but that just contradicts everything I believe. If he'd said to me, I want to put development plans in place for everybody so they can achieve goals in the future, this is a great way to baseline where they are so we can figure out where we need to get to, I would have been all about that.
Mm-hmm.
He was just trying to, shortcut the whole evaluation process.
He was trying to come in and put boxes in place and use the feedback from other people as a form of evaluation, which isn't what a 360 is designed for. The 360 is designed for feedback, not accountability. That's what it's about. Yeah. And I love what you just said. And it's Max Dupree is the first one I heard who wrote Leadership as an Art, former chairman of Herman Miller. He talked about, the tension between efficient and effectiveness. And I've never seen that pulse, Andrew, pushed on more than today because of AI coming in, trying to make us more efficient. But there's a difference whenever we use AI from a communication standpoint, and it robs from I just got through talking to somebody this morning that is a hairstylist. And we were talking, he runs a really cool, he got a big boutique that he runs. And we were talking about the subject of AI and how he said, I need to spend more time with it. And I said, why? Because you can use it for data management, but your great value and gift is the personal touch that you breed into your clients and the people, whatever. And AI will never give you that. Will never breathe that into it. At least today. Now, next year with the new robots, who knows what's going to come out?
Perhaps. We'll see.
I got a question. It's right now, the people I'm talking to in the marketplace, across the board, everybody's feeling kind of stretched pretty thin. They just are. And so because of that, is there any practical advice that you have that somebody's trying to lead in today's culture that's just stretching us with data overload, moving at hyper warp speed and dealing with less clarity on what the next step needs to be that's causing us to operate more thinly? What advice do you give?
Yeah. So we teach a model called the ceiling of complexity. What you're describing, when people run out of time, they're actually operating, their job has become so complex that they can't do anymore. They've run out of time, right? And we all run out of time eventually. I mean, you don't care how many hours a week you work. Eventually you're going to run out of time, right? So it's a finite resource. So what happens with us when we get in a job, we become more productive, and eventually we level out. We reach a ceiling of complexity where we say, I don't have any more time. And what we say is, and this is hurtful to leaders, that we create the ceiling of complexity. We create our own ceiling of complexity. We create it through our skills, our behaviors, and our beliefs. And the question then becomes, how do you know? How do you know you self-created it? Well, we were working with a large insurance company years ago. Progressive Insurance is a massive client of ours. And we were working all over the country with state-level claims offices. So they had basically the same offices, same people doing exactly the same thing in all these different offices across the state. And yet what we found was we had some managers and some supervisors who were way more successful than other ones. And the easy thing to say was, they're just more talented. Maybe, but they're doing the same job, but they all run out of time at a different place. In other words, their ceiling of complexity was not at the same level. So it had to be self-created. It had to be, because they were doing the same thing. Okay, so what created by what? Well, by their skills. That's an obvious one, right? How skilled they are at different things. by their behaviors, the things that they did, and by the belief systems that they brought to work. So we have limiting beliefs and we have empowering beliefs. And so what we do with leaders when they are running out of time is we say to them, what is it? What is it that you need to shift in order to break through your ceiling of complexity and go to another level? Now, eventually, you know what you're going to do? You're going to run out of time again. Now,
You're going to go to another level. That's right.
the beautiful thing about leadership, if you have the ability to leverage yourself through other people, so ultimately you can continue to grow. But I think what we do is we tend to think the problem is time. The problem is complexity. Now, I love the way Elon Musk looks at complexity. We used to say simplify, eliminate, delegate, right? Well, he reversed it. He said eliminate. Eliminate first, right? What do we not even need to be doing? I drive a Tesla, and I rarely use the brake pedal. You take your foot off the gas and the car slows down. There's no key in a Tesla. You just get in, you start driving. Freaks my wife out. She's like, in fact, it freaked me out when I stopped. After I got my Tesla, I started getting out of my wife's car and I forget to turn it off. I'm like, well, why do I have to turn the damn thing off? It knows I left. Why can't it just turn itself off? So anyway, but he's about eliminate first. So if you've got a lot going on in your life, you want to eliminate first. All right. The next thing you want to do is simplify. What if we can't be eliminated, how do we make it as simple as possible? Then you delegate, then you automate. Okay. So it's eliminate, simplify, delegate, automate. And I've started using that with our clients that are running out of time. I'm like, well, what do you not even need to be doing? I cannot tell you the number of times clients they're producing reports that nobody reads. And I had a client one time say, well, I can't just stop doing the reporting I've been told to do. I said, why not? I said, just see if anyone notices. You know what happens half the time? Nobody notices that they're not putting out the reports anymore. Now, if it's the P&L, put out the P&L.
Different story. Yeah, different story.
But if it's some antiquated report that you were asked to start running, just stop running it and see if anybody even notices that you're not running it anymore.
Or look at the report you're running and recognize that 70% of the data on the report is not meaningful for today at this moment in time. Eliminate the information on the report that we just don't need today and focus your attention on what is important so that you don't have to,
exactly.
Somebody doesn't have to navigate and like they're dealing with some type of English garden, going through the maze kind of process to be effective with what they're doing then. So with everything we've been talking about so far, is there a mindset shift that can immediately alter the way that people are interacting with their teams?
Yeah. It has to do with what we started talking about, is that it's not them, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
I've asked leadership teams this forever. I'm like, do you struggle with, people on your team? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, you know what the problem is, right? And they're like, them? I'm like, no, it's that you think you're normal. Like by definition, if you are in a leadership position, you are not normal. Normal is a statistical probability of something occurring. If you're promoted to leadership, it's because you're not normal. So to turn around and look at your people and say, well, they're not like me. Well, of course they're not like you. That's, no, that doesn't mean everything they're doing is okay or needs to continue. But to say they're not normal because they're not like you misses the whole point. They're not like you.
Yeah, another thing along those lines is quit saying, I would do it that way. Doesn't matter how you would do it, right? It has to do with what skill, what talent, what capability are they bringing to the table? How might they approach it, and to be able to move in that direction? I think is a key aspect to this thing. I'm fascinated, because we started this whole subject off with frustration. And a lot of times I found out one of the things that frustrates leaders, especially leaders of leaders, it falls in line with what we're talking about. Well, I would be doing that in that way, in that situation and circumstance. What advice can you give to a leader who's somebody on their leadership team isn't accomplishing the goals and objectives that either in a manner or within the time frame that's being required?
Yeah, so I'm assuming the question is based around they're not accomplishing in a manner that's acceptable, not just that they're doing it differently. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this by way of anecdote.
Anecdote.
Not an anecdote. That would be different. An anecdote. Years ago, I had a CEO called me up. He's running a large commercial organization, and he said to me, I've got to get rid of Fred. Name change. I'm changing the names to
protect the innocent. I got it. So
he said that I said, what's wrong with Fred? And he's like, he's just not getting the job done. And it's a pretty senior leader, Fred. And I said, what are his metrics? And he's like, they're awesome. And I was like, really? I said, so you're firing him because metrics are awesome? He said, no, his metrics are awesome because I'm doing his job for him. And I was like, yeah, he's like, but now I don't know how to fire him because he looks like he's doing a great job, but he's not. It's because I'm doing his job for him. And so, the great thing about doing executive coaching is I'd never had this problem posed to me before. I was like, let me think on this for a little bit. So I came back to him and I said, well, now here's the challenge. I said, you've been managing based off metrics, which at a senior level are in a long way of speaking, they're lagging indicators of success, right? So you do something and sometimes you have to wait 12 to 18 months if it actually worked or not, right? I said, you need to start talking about the leading indicators of success. So we need to actually establish a scorecard that has not just key performance indicators, but has key accountabilities and competencies that drive success in the job. Plus, what does values alignment look like in that position? So our scorecards, and we help organizations when we help them with leadership, we always have them create scorecards for the positions in their organization. The scorecard is not just what's on the clock. That's the key performance indicators, right? It involves the competencies. And so when we looked at that particular position and we looked at the key accountabilities and the competencies, I said, well, you're not firing him for the key performance indicators because he's not meeting these. And I said to him, I said, but you know who failed here? And he said, Fred. I said, no, you failed because you actually set him up to fail by doing his job for him and not giving him appropriate feedback that he was not doing the job properly. I said, now, I'm not trying to beat you up, but it's okay to make a mistake. It's not okay to continue to make it. So you have to be clear with your people what you're expecting from them, not just in terms of performance results. Because a lot of times, if you're heading an organization, you can't afford to have people fail. So you will lean into their position and do certain parts of their job for them. When you find yourself doing that, you got to start coaching them around that and telling them what's happening, not just let them blissfully ride off into the sunset with a big mortgage and a bunch of kids in college and then fire.
Yep. And that's right. They step into that coaching space, is what you're talking about.
Yes.
And I think that that's just wise and very sage advice, Andrew. And the fact that what you're talking about is that an effective leader is somebody who has a desire to provide feedback, right? Not criticism, feedback. Because what feedback does, it opens the door to growth.
Correct.
Criticism has a tendency to come across as attacking someone. And there's a difference in the two. And the more you can hone that skill down, I think you increase self accountability, which is what that leader was falling short on, wasn't it?
Yeah, without question.
Yeah. So if you look at this, I say this with I think all my interviews now, but I wish I had more time. I'll give you the final question, which is a very open ended. What's an important message that you want people who are listening to us, to walk away with that you just haven't either done deeply enough or haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, there's two things that people are talking about today. It's the younger generation and how they approach work differently and AI. So I would just say, first of all, young people are not the problem. And by the way, even if they are, they're not going away. So we better figure out what to do differently with them. Saying they don't approach work the way that we did. No, they don't. You know what? They've watched their fathers and their siblings get trashed by large corporations and laid off after doing nothing maybe wrong. I mean, the social contract has sort of been eliminated. And so they're like, they are very self-centered and they're got very short timelines about what, where they want to be and what they want to do. And recognizing that that's the environment we live in. We may not like it, but it is a reality that we need to be aware of with young people today. They have much more aggressive timelines. Maybe sometimes not very realistic, although I'm not sure mine were when I started my career either, to be perfectly honest. It's hard to remember back that far and remember what it was like when you were sitting in the seat that they're in today. So that's one thing. And the other thing I would just say is about AI. AI is a great thought partner. It's not a great thought leader. Do not let it do your thinking for you. Use it. Sure. I use AI every day to further and poke holes in my thinking and be an antagonist and about things that I'm trying to think through or to synthesize information, but don't let it do your thinking. Because, when you think about it, you mentioned this with your hairstylist client, right? There's art and there's science. And AI is probably never going to be fantastic at art. Leadership is more art than science. And the only part that the AI model can do a good job of is the science. Now, it can actually help you understand and see things and stuff from a leadership context, but how to do it, that's an art. And so you got to lean into the art because that's where you will distinguish yourself and that's where you will become more valuable in the future.
Very much so. I love what you're talking about because of the fact that is not going away. As a matter of fact, it is changing the landscape for us as you and I speak right now. But I was talking to somebody earlier that's a future guest on the show that what AI is doing is it's giving leaders a level playing field, meaning that all the information is out there. That's at leaders' fingertips. The difference is how do leaders use that information and how they interact, and that's where the art comes into play. And Andrew, the other thing that you're making me think about when you talked about that at one point in time, you and I were the younger generation. The older generation that was in existence when we were the younger generation looked at us, and I'll use my dad, for example. My dad would shake his head and go, what's the world going to come to?
Yeah, that's right.
What's the world going to come to? Not about me, but about what he was seeing on television and stuff taking place. And so, you know what? This younger generation, okay, world's in good hands. We're watching what they're going to shape and reshape and do things as we go through it. What we need to be doing is helping them become the type of leaders that the future world needs. And so, you've got an awesome an offer to people, and I want to make sure I get this right. The Oxley Group, they go. Is your website address oxleygroup.com?
No, it's actually tied to exactly what our coaching is all about, which is transforming results. So if you go to transformingresults.com, and the top right hand corner, you're going to see a free workshop button. And so if you like what you've done here, we actually go through 4 leadership challenges on the workshop. And we sort of actually also provide a free leadership assessment as part of that. And, obviously for us, that gives people an opportunity to learn more. And it's an opportunity for us to give back to your audience, Mike. So
I love it then. So, check him out. This will also be in the show notes, but go to his website. Take advantage of being a part of the workshop. It's free. And I think anytime we can step away to have other resources be able to speak into us, I call it the brick upside the head. Maybe you'll hear something in that workshop that you've heard before, but that day, that moment, that time, it's like the brick upside the head that there'll be time to be used to reshape it. Andrew, thank you so much for the work you're doing, and I just wish you continued success.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate the time with you.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.